So welcome everybody. We're really glad to have everybody here for this Pathways to Recovery Adventure and Recreation program. We kind of did this to schedule around Recovery Month. September's National Recovery Month. So really want to show the different ways that people across the region provide supportive environments for those in recovery from substance use disorders. As you all know, we are be part of the conversation. Our website is a wealth of information. You can find that at conversation.zone. This is kind of our first program of the year of our new school year calendar year for fiscal year. So if we're a little rusty, you can forgive us. You can submit questions at any time through the chat. We are recording this program, so you can find a lot of information that the presenters are going to give at the follow-up page at conversations.zone/pathways. Kim's going to be putting a bunch of information in the chat as we move along through the programming tonight.
I have to take notes.
There will be a survey that pops up at the end of the program. It'll open up in a separate web browser from whatever browser you joined. So we appreciate any and all feedback. It really helps us be intentional with how we are delivering our programming and what information we can give to the community. Some programs we have coming up that may be of interest to you. Next Tuesday night, we have alcohol or cultural drug of choice. It's another Zoom program. It's really going to be kind of talking about alcohol use in the U.S. And the region. The following week, we have the changing landscape of substance use and treatment. This is going to be in person at Ethos Treatment Center in Plymouth Meeting. This is going to be a naloxone training, and the program's actually 6:30 to 8 p.m., not 6:30 to 8:30. That was a typo on my part. And also that link is wrong in there too. So Kim will put that. We can tell we're a little rusty with putting together our PowerPoints. And this was my job too. So this is going to be a naloxone training and an education on what is going on with today's current drug supply. We have Sarah Laurel from Savage Sisters is coming out to deliver the programming. So we're going to, and hopefully another treatment provider, but there'll be free naloxone available. So yeah, Kim will put those links in the chat to show you where we're going. But as I said, this is kind of the start of our new year of programming. So all of our upcoming programs can be found at our website. We also have our parent partnership meetings, supporting families through addictions with a child with addiction. We have 19 meetings a week as of tomorrow night. These are both in person and on Zoom still. So they're all across the region, 5 nights a week. 5 days a week. So if you need support, this is parents helping other parents navigate a child's substance use disorder regardless of their age. In addition to that, we have our family recovery course. This is a three-part peer-led educational training for parents, guardians, caregivers whose child at any stage of life has struggled with alcohol or drugs. This is free. It's limited to 12 participants for each course. We have some additional courses we just launched through the end of December. So there's plenty of opportunities if you check any of these boxes and are just looking for a deeper dive into how addiction impacts the family systems. So that's going to get us to our programming for tonight, Pathways to Recovery. So I'm going to give a little bit of information, and then we'll turn it over to our presenters. I figured we'd start with what is recovery. It's can be a confusing thing when you or your loved one is struggling with drugs and alcohol to really know what that recovery word means. So I pulled SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, and I really think they've great definition. They really worked hard on it, but it's that process of change through which individuals improve their health and wellness live a self-directed life and strive to reach their full potential. And this definition was not around when I entered recovery 11 years ago, but I really think it really puts good words to what I was seeking, when I needed to enter recovery. And the four dimensions that really support that life in recovery, we know that like a 30-day inpatient stay is that like kind of bring somebody on that bridge to recovery. Stepping into that first AA meeting, you're not going to figure everything out in that moment. So what things help support that life in recovery? Improving your health, having a home, and then really what we're going to talk about tonight is that community. And for all these people, that community led to an additional purpose. So that's kind of where we're starting. And I know for me and a lot of people, like I expected my recovery would be this like really straight and narrow path, but really it's a roller coaster. There's twists and turns, there's ups and downs. You end up upside down sometimes and you don't know why. But it really define it entering recovery isn't what I expected. And the path isn't always clear. There's a lot of different components and a lot of different ways that people enter and seek recovery. You hear a lot about the secular, the spiritual, the religious, natural recovery, peer assisted, treatment assisted, abstinence based, moderation, medication assisted. There's a lot of different things that you can hear when you hear recovery. Some of the things is like that really helps people. They have their own unique journey. Recovery pathways are highly personalized and building on the strengths, needs, and goals of the individual. So, for the person seeking recovery is like, what do I need today? What options are available to me? What is and what isn't working? And, we look at that live being constantly evolving, and we may need to adjust what our recovery supports need to be in that moment. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the big the more popular and more well-known ones, but there's the 12 steps programs. There's peer support models, which is Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, are kind of the most synonymous with the recovery community. There's also Smart Recovery. There's also clinical pathways to recovery. So there's a whole bunch of different ways that, whether it's treatment programs, therapists, individual therapists, group therapists, family therapy, medication. There's all these clinical ways that help support your recovery. As I said earlier, housing is a important component. About a year and a half ago now, we did a program on what recovery housing looks like, especially with Pennsylvania's requirements for recovery houses in the state. So if you need resources on recovery housing, that can be found at that website there, the conversation.zone/housing. Some people enter recovery through drug treatment courts. There's been a large push in the Philadelphia region for treatment court programs that have some type of monitoring to help reduce sentence times and keep people engaged in some type of recovery process. There's a lot of professional programming. So, there's nurses, lawyers, pharmacists, flight pilots, people that may have some type of license on the line. If they get in some type of legal trouble or recognize for themselves that there's a substance use disorder at play, there's all these different types of monitoring programs that kind of have really great outcomes because there's 5 years of engagement with peers, whether that's professionals, some type of, urine screens, things like that, really help keep people accountable and, connected with some type of community of similar of peers. Kim put these slides together and I really like it, but it's like this Swiss cheese model for recovery. There's a lot of holes missing here. Some people start with inpatient treatment. They may supplement that with 12-step meetings. Then they get their therapy. then they get some other type of recovery community, whether that could be recovery. Um, but what that really does is, kind of make it so no gaps are missing. And it really gives like a full and comprehensive support system for the individual that's seeking recovery. So, we really want to say that like all of these components, whatever the individuals choose, can be really important and really beneficial for the person, for their family, for their friends, for their community, to find that definition of recovery, to find that meaningful life, to find that purpose. So tonight we have people joining us that have done a lot of really great things. We have Tom Coyne, Lauren Johnston, Jeff Rake, Laura Waits. They're going to be presenting in that order. But we are really excited to have all of them here for us, with us tonight, to kind of talk about their pathways to recovery, what's working for them, and what they're bringing to the community at large. So I'm going to tee up our speakers. We're going to start with Tom. Tom Coyne is an award-winning and New York Times bestselling author who has been publishing golf stories since 2001. Tom's feature story, The Lucky Ones, details his experiences as a recovering golfer and member of Philadelphia's Wilson Smith Sober Golf League, and was named Best Feature Story of 2021 by Golf Writers Association of America. Tom is senior editor and podcast host at the Golfers Journal and has written for Golf Magazine, Golf Week, Sports Illustrated, the New York Times, and numerous other publications. Let me introduce Tom for you.
Hey, everybody. Bob, thank you so much. And it's an honor to be here. It's great to be here, sober and feeling pretty well, but definitely feeling sober. So, and I really appreciate all the work that be a part of the conversation's doing, and it's great to be a part of the conversation. So, I guess for my story, I think my voice it's been an interesting ride. So I sort of went down the path of I've been a writer ever since I got out of graduate school, and I gravitated toward that life. I think in part because it was something I love to do, but also the lifestyle was very attractive. When you're a writer, there's this expectation that you indulge, or if you're any artist or creative person, I think there is an expectation that and a romanticizing of that lifestyle, that there's an overindulgence associated with it, and I certainly enjoyed that and appreciated that until it got to the point where I couldn't effectively, until my drinking got to the point where I couldn't be effective as a writer, as a creative person. I got into my writing had to do with golf. I grew up caddying in Delaware County at a club called Rolling Green. I wrote a novel about caddies, a story called A Gentleman's Game, and that I wrote that when I was in graduate school, and it got published and made into a movie, and suddenly I was a golf writer. And it was great. And they weren't the most productive years because I was also in sort of an alcoholic in training, until I was an alcoholic in very full bloom later in my career. I think things came to a head when I took a book contract and took the advance for a book. My third book was my first bestseller, and then I signed a deal for another book, took the advance, and didn't write the book. And they frown on that. The publishers don't. They're sticky like that. They want you to write the book when they pay you for it. How annoying. But it was one of those moments in my life that I thought I'll never survive this. This is I don't have the money. I'm waiting for the lawyer to call. I'm waiting for them to come knocking on my door. Dodging emails, dodging phone calls, I just feeling like it's over. Like my career's over, my life's over. I'll never be able to overcome this. And that sort of leads down because, because of my drinking, but I needed my drinking to get through it. It's that sort of spiral that led me to a really dark place. But now looking back on it, I think that experience, by forcing me into that, what was my bottom, it gave me this life that I have today. As my mom's 50 years sober, and she talks about a life beyond your wildest dreams, and it's a word we know from recovery. It's an expression we know from recovery, and I always found it annoying, because I thought, it was it's just sort of silly cliched promises. But to think about where I was then and where I am now, this is a life beyond my wildest dreams, 1000%. So yeah, that thing that I thought was going to kill me, this book that I didn't write, I went to rehab for a bit, went into Alcoholics Anonymous, again, where my family has a long and distinguished legacy. But I wasn't the one who was gonna outsmart this thing. Well, I suppose that's not how it works. So got better. That thing, the book problem went away. And the miracle to me is the thing that I thought I would never be able to do as a sober person, which was to play golf again, because I'd been playing since I was 7 years old. But that was a world very closely associated with drinking for me, and it is for a lot of people. It's sort of an excuse to drink outdoors. For an alcoholic, that's certainly what it is. But even for most people, alcohol is sort of tied. I don't know how that happens, but it has. So I thought, okay, we'll write off golf. I'll have to find another hobby or something to do. But thanks pretty much exclusively to there's a sober golf league in Philadelphia we call the Wilson Smith League. Those names might ring a bell. And it's grown from 4 guys getting together on a Saturday so that they wouldn't drink, and having something to do. 4 guys new in recovery. And now we have over 100 participants, and with a waiting list of people who want to play. And it's a community of sober golfers. We play matches at each other's courses. It's actually quite competitive. We have championships at the end of the year. We travel together, go on trips, and create that fellowship that replaces what, for that sort of cycle of golf, drink, drunk, try and find your way home, replaces it with something else, which is really healthy fellowship. And to me, that fellowship, my sober golfing friends that is my network now. I wish I got sober in the city and had a really great network there, and then moved. And when you move, and that transition of your network sort of changes, and the people that you're used to seeing in recovery, etc. But my sober golf crew has always been there. They've been with me for the last 11 years of sobriety, and it's been an incredible gift. So I wrote a story about them, as Bob mentioned, with their blessing, with group conscience on it, not to sort of bring and doing it according to the traditions of recovery, not mentioning specific recovery programs, etc., but telling the story of people who didn't see a way out and found a way out, and now get together to play golf, and was very fortunate, to have a place to publish that, and to see it so well received. So again, all credit to the league, not to me. I just was there to capture the story. So, but because of that, I'd written about myself as being a sober person in a book I wrote about golf in Scotland, because I did a book about golf in Ireland, not sober, in which I visited 247 pubs and rated them all. And then I did a book later about golf in Scotland, and I did that book sober. And that to me was a bit of a miracle, to be able to travel Scotland for months, golf all its golf courses, and do it as a sober person. And it was a great, and it was just it was a joyful thing to be able to do. And I woke up every day grateful to wake up feeling healthy and well and ready for the day. And it was, I mean, when we say, like, when you get sober, people tell you can do anything. Well, that would be something that I said, I'll never be able to do something like that. And because I had sober buddies visiting me or calling or checking in, it was just, living right was at the forefront of my mind, and it became the forefront of that story. So I was out in the world, at least among people who read golf books, as a sober person. So the real gift of that, and again, I haven't been outwardly tried to put myself on any pedestal as the sober golfer person. I've just written about my life as someone who doesn't drink and plays golf. And but it's been wonderful that that's resulted in, over the years since I have, thousands of people in the golf world who have reached out curious about a golf league or how to stay in golf and stay sober. I need help. What do I do? That sort of stuff. That's been the real gift of it. That there were a lot of stories that I looked at. Stephen King's Recovery was one of them, where I thought, oh, you can be a writer and be sober. And I think it's useful to remind people who love a pastime associated with alcohol that you can still do it and be sober. And in fact, you usually play a lot better as well. In fact, well, you always play a lot better, and you remember it, which is even nicer. So, I've gotten the thing that I love most in my life, aside from my family. I've gotten it back thanks to recovery, when I thought that as a sober person I could never have it. So it's been a great ride. Not too unlike the roller coaster Bob showed us, but smoother and steadier than it has been.
Thanks, Tom. We appreciate that. Funny story. I did a lot of underage drinking at Rolling Green as well. I grew up right by there. Yeah, I grew up right by there. So it's not always what you expect to hear when, yeah, it's good stuff. Yeah, thanks for sharing your experience with that. Next up, we're going to have Lauren Johnston from the Phoenix. Lauren serves as the Philadelphia Volunteer Coordinator at the Phoenix, an organization that leverages physical activity and community to foster lasting recovery. Lauren holds a master's in public health from Thomas Jefferson University and is dedicated to changing the stigma surrounding substance use recovery. Through her own battles with substance use disorder, she has cultivated a deep understanding of the recovery process and found solace and inspiration in the mission of the Phoenix. Lauren firmly believes in utilizing personal growth, compassion, and community-driven efforts to reshape the narrative of recovery. She's committed to breaking down barriers and creating accessible pathways to resources for those affected by substance use disorder. Let me introduce Lauren to y'all.
Thank you, Bob. And thank you, Kim and Pathways, for organizing this tonight. I'm excited to be here and be part of this conversation. So I'll share a little bit about how just my journey with recovery and substance use and how it kind of led me to the Phoenix and where I stand today. So I was first exposed to alcohol at the age of 12. And it was more just who I decided to associate with at the time. I was always the youngest in my group. And I also played sports at a competitive level my whole life. And so, as Tom was saying about the golf world, something in sports and drinking kind of just go hand in hand. For me, there was always doctors that were just willing to give you whatever they had in their bag, which led me to start pills shortly after. And this just became a regular thing for most of my life. until I went to college, played a varsity sport, and was working 3 jobs. And at that point was kind of full swing into using anything in sight, stay awake to go to sleep, got in just that circular rhythm and had a lot of trouble breaking it, especially when at a college level, athletes are encouraged to party a lot. So a lot of people prided themselves on being able to party really hard, wake up really early in the morning, do workouts, and kind of just continue that cycle all the time. And then when it got to the point where it clearly was not going to be sustainable as much as I had hoped, I really struggled with how do I reach out? How do I ask for help when I didn't know anyone that was in recovery? And the stigma was just so strong that I felt really ashamed to reach out and ask. And also more for other people's, I was raised that we didn't speak about problems. You dealt with it yourself. And so that was really difficult for me to figure out, am I even allowed to ask for help? What will my parents think? What will my friends think? And so for a number of years, that prevented me from reaching out. Luckily, it turned out, I learned years later, my parents were really supportive. They were just scared that I would feel embarrassed if they said something, so they refrained from saying anything. So that cycle didn't really help anyone, but at least I found my way eventually. I tried a bunch of 12-step programs. They just didn't really resonate with me. And recovery is such an individual experience that everyone has their own way. So I kept trying different things. I tried SMART meetings. That wasn't really resonating with me either. And eventually I overdosed for a second time. My roommate found me on the floor. And he gave me Narcan. And then the next day I just walked into the ER and was like, hey, I just want my vitals checked. I kind of OD'd last night. And they were like, what is wrong with you? Like, you're just casually walks in like this. And so then I started thinking, and I was like, all right, maybe this is an issue. It's really affecting the people around me. And as difficult as it was, I decided to make the decision that I was going to remain clean and get sober and do it. Because there was no way if I continued down that road, it's either I was going to end up dead or end up in a jail cell. And so fortunately, I was able to get clean and sober on my own. It took a lot of time, and I found a great doctor through Penn who introduced me to their MAT clinic. So I started on Suboxone, and I was on that for a few years and really was kind of discouraged on having to take medication every day. And so eventually, even though it was a very uncomfortable process, they weaned me off of it. And so now I don't take anything. But yeah, getting there was definitely, it took a long time. I had to lose a lot of friendships, which luckily I've now been able to regain all of them. But I was really worried, especially with the medical system, of being labeled. My mom's a physician, and I knew from growing up, once you kind of have certain labels on you, it's really difficult to get things done, especially related to insurance. So that was always kind of on the tip of my mind every time I went and saw a doctor. Also, being a person of color in the medical system, seeing how my mom was treated, even though she is a doctor, with people assuming that she wasn't a doctor when we'd go out. I was really worried, just kind of with sharing my story to medical professionals. And so luckily I was able to become comfortable with just living in my own discomfort on a regular basis and really powering through that. And I also really encourage others to do that, because you're capable of so much more than you know. And it just takes time and kind of just sitting with it. And I think all of us have really experienced that through the pandemic, when you're sitting in isolation for a long time. And that's similar to just going through recovery is you can feel very isolated from individuals, and kind of wishing that you had some sort of community that understood what you're going through or could be there for support when you needed. And that's actually how I landed on the Phoenix. So I had seen Scott Strode, who's the founder of the Phoenix. I'd seen a TED Talk that he had done on maybe like a 10-second blurb on the news one day. And I had been a little discouraged because I knew I wanted to pursue public health, and I knew I wanted to pursue substance use in public health, but I couldn't quite find a job that entailed what it was exactly that I wanted to do. And so when I discovered the Phoenix, it's a sober active community, where all of the events are free. The only requirement is 48 hours of sobriety. And it offers just a safe, welcoming support system. It's not treatment based, so it kind of helps bridge the gap for individuals that are coming out of treatment to sustaining long-term recovery, and at the same time, individuals who have got clean or sober on their own, and just offering an outlet and a way for them to continue, because a support system of some kind is just really important, and having those networks, and also physical activity is just so beneficial for both mental and physical health. So when I came across the Phoenix, I saw that they offered running events, biking events, yoga, CrossFit, and I can say that confidently, CrossFitters hate this, that I'm a 3-time CrossFitter due to the Phoenix. I'm trying to go 4 times. My body just hurts, so I need a little time to recuperate in between sessions. But I was super intimidated by hearing the words CrossFit before. And then the first time I went to a Phoenix class, it was nice. It was Phoenix members, and the volunteer leading it was also a peer in recovery. And they really walked you through and tailored the session so that everyone felt comfortable. And so pretty much the running joke is you can make anything a Phoenix event. And I encourage everyone to. So if you have a hobby that you really love, then you can just turn it into an event. And basically what that does is we have an app, and it's a way to broadcast to just a wider network of individuals what you might already be doing on a regular basis, so that you can have others join you. And so the goal of the Phoenix is to reach 1 million individuals impacted by substance use disorder by 2025. In 2006, between 2006 when it started to 2020, there were 40,000 members. Due to the pandemic, between 2020 to now, we now have over 300,000 members. So that also just shows the impact and the need for this type of programming. With the pandemic, substance use has just increased drastically, and just the public health aspect of it, and the need to try to provide outlets when treatment centers are overflowing, they don't have enough beds to offer. It's something else that we can do. The 48-hour rule is enough time that even if someone relapses, they can still feel comfortable knowing that within just 2 days, they can still attend events. So it's just a lower barrier for people to enter and re-enter and keep coming back to events, because we don't want to bar people from receiving services. And also, it offers a great network amongst individuals. So we're currently expanding the Philly programming. We recently started doing team sports. So we have a softball team for the Phoenix right now. And it's been great because it allows us to just have new people join as they can every week, and just come and play. And then also, I think things like this are just so important, because I hear in Philly people asking the same questions that I was asking before. It's just, what other options do I have to recovery? Like, I want to be in the recovery community in some way, or I might want to just dip my toes in. And it just helps to see that there are other people there. And as we move forward with these programs, I think it's just important that we focus on the communities that we're entering and how we can help mitigate some of those barriers, talking to community leaders, specifically communities that have traditionally been isolated and received less services, really just making sure that we do our part to go in and reach out and tailor our programming to those communities rather than tell them what they need. Really just ask the question, what can we do? How can we be of service? And like, we're all in this together. Recovery is something that impacts everyone in some way and is just such a larger issue. So all of us working together and just offering this, I think is amazing. So yes, thank you.
Thanks, Lauren. Appreciated everything you had to say there. And as a CrossFitter, I understand why people say that about CrossFit. So glad you made it to 3 classes at least. It does get easier as time goes along too. So next up we have Jeff Rake from the I Swim For Foundation. Jeff is the founder of the I Swim For Foundation, whose mission is to serve others in recovery with a program of physical well-being focused on enhancing their mental well-being through therapeutic benefits of swimming. A lifelong swimmer, Jeff decided to pursue ambitious marathon swim goals after entering into a program of recovery from alcoholism in his 50s. To date, Jeff has completed the 12K Traversée de l'Arc Tremblant, the 12-mile circumnavigation of Coronado Island, and the 20.3-mile Catalina Channel, using each swim to raise funds for the Heron Project while generating awareness of what's possible in recovery. So with that, I give you Jeff.
Thanks, Bob. It's great. And thanks for organizing this to everyone, Bob and Kim, and good to see everyone. Yep, I'm Jeff Rake. And I am a recovering alcoholic, and I am a marathon swimmer. First and foremost, I guess, qualifying myself as an alcoholic, it's important to note that I understand firsthand what it means, to feel that hopelessness, that constant craving and obsession, the inability to stop pursuing that next drink. And as a result, having really, nothing in store, nothing left to offer except more hopelessness, more craving, and a cycle of self-destruction. And I'm also a marathon swimmer. I'm 57 years old, and I say that for a reason. Because in the past 4 years, after the age of 50, I successfully accomplished those swims that Bob noted. The Catalina Channel is part of the global Triple Crown of open water swimming, along with the English Channel and the 20 Bridges, which is the Around Manhattan swim. And it's that recovery part that has allowed me to accomplish these milestones. It's in recovery that we can find hope, of course, but not just hope that anything can happen, but also, the strength to make these things happen. And that's kind of why I created this foundation. That's the wish for our foundation, is to help others develop the strength to take action on that hope so that they can also maximize their own potential. A little more background on me, just to, again, qualify myself, I guess, in terms of whatever my community, how I identified my hopelessness, etc. I grew up in Southern California. I was a surfer and a swimmer, kind of stereotypical Southern California guy. And I proudly identified with that. Ocean loving, played water polo and swam through high school, a little bit of college, got into triathlons right after college, moved to Chicago. And in my mid-20s, connected with a group of cyclists, and I started racing bikes. I was always part of those athletic little communities, and that was, part of my identity. After, I got married and had 3 kids. My wife had 3 kids. We had 3 kids. Obviously, you back off of some of that hardcore or whatever, some of that athletic stuff as a necessity. I'd still get on the bike, go for an occasional run and dabble in swimming. And I actually did a couple of 5-mile swims with my oldest brother, which I thought at that time was probably the pinnacle of what I could possibly achieve. And I relate this not to be boastful, but to kind of relate, how I lived and how I identified, and I was connected with all this community, kind of a weekend warrior, and not unlike a lot of people, not unlike a lot of men my age. Certainly, I'm not unique, but I was connected and I was part of, and alcohol stripped all that away from me. And then I got physical limitations, which really dashed my hopes. I have arthritis, just kind of a wicked arthritis in my feet, and I've got compound fractures in some of my vertebrae, and just, obviously alcohol didn't do anything positive for all that stuff. And so fast forward to my 40s, I kind of advanced through a career in the ad agency business, was forced out of that job due to a change in the client roster. And I said, well, I'll transition into commercial real estate because, it's commission only, but, I get rich quick, and it's a highly volatile field. I specialize in hotel real estate, and I kind of got my feet under me right during the great financial crisis. And of course that went bust, and so did I. I always had it, and the disease was always within me. I always had those kind of those leanings, I guess, but it really took off, after that. I'd send out a few resumes every day, and by 10 o'clock, I was like, well, time to have a couple beers. And, all this uncertainty, combined with my disease, just caused my alcoholism to spiral. I was underemployed, often unemployed. I developed, as I said, arthritis in my feet, compression fractures in my spine. And I actually also have a condition called sarcoidosis in my lungs, which impaired my ability to breathe right, which is somewhat, I thought it had kind of completely abated, but it's somewhat abated. It's kind of come back. So now, father of 3 daughters who are nearly grown, so they're almost, done. They've been subject to a dysfunctional family. Can't reverse that. I haven't completely finished my degree. I've got like 4 electives yet to go. So, a lot of jobs are, out of my reach. And I can't go back to the advertising industry because in the decade that I was out, it completely changed drastically. And, and I, because of my physical limitations, I can't, enjoy those pursuits that I once did and was identified with. And so, I was really feeling hopeless, completely disconnected, totally hopeless. I felt like, I'm over 50 and it's too late for me. It's done. And then I got sober, and all of a sudden it wasn't too late. After a few years of kind of testing and trying out the sober community, and, it was AA community, I was actually introduced to a program of fitness in recovery. And, I really took it to heart. I was like, okay, getting in shape makes me feel so much better. And this physical well-being really enhanced the mental well-being, which really helped me to grasp my program of recovery. And so, I latched onto that. And yeah, I kept on going, and I really, at 50, you're not going to join the golf tour. You're not going to join the pro golf tour. You're not going to, get drafted by an NFL team or an NBA team. But what I could do is swim. I recognized that I could swim further and sometimes faster than everybody. And I had a passion for it, and I wanted to see, how far I could take it. And so as I mentioned, I'd done a couple 5-milers in the past, and I wanted to see if I could go do a little further. So I signed up for that 12K, which is 7.5 miles, and I thought that would be a real test. But I trained. I'd been training for a couple of years, and I actually ended up placing second in my in men over 50. And I thought, I'm gonna raise money for a charity, as people often do if they run a 10K or a marathon or something. And I researched a few charities, and Chris Herron's got the Herron Project, which provides treatment scholarships, family counseling, and preventative education for school-aged children. And I raised $500 for that. And I decided, I kept on wanting to go further. And it wasn't just for myself. I wanted to go further. I'd started teaching lessons for kids at the Y and coaching swimming for mostly adult novice triathletes. And I recognized that passion I had for teaching and coaching. And being part of this open water community, I started to hear all these stories about the therapeutic aspects of swimming, like these people that discovered swimming later in life and all of a sudden were able to overcome, extreme crippling anxiety, or, had discovered just a new confidence in themselves. And there was, obviously there was something about physical fitness as an enhancement to your mental well-being, but there was just something a little bit extra special about swimming. And I really wanted to, to kind of manifest that mission, to kind of introduce that to more people. The meditative, the therapeutic, the cathartic benefits of swimming. I really decided that's part of my mission, is to pass that on. And that's when I came up with the concept of I Swim For. Was going to demonstrate what's possible in recovery by these swimming. I was an old washed up drunk who was able to swim for miles and miles and for hours and hours, to shine a light on the tremendous possibilities that existed in recovery. And there's a lot of people, I think, that have a much more I think much more meaningful aspirations involve being a good parent, a loving husband, someone that's a reliable colleague. But swimming the Catalina Channel is what gets you in the newspapers, and so I really wanted to use that as a platform to shine a light on what's possible in recovery. You can do big things, and these were big things that I was able to do, even this late in life. And I wanted to help others to discover that. And so today, the I Swim For Foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and we serve to promote sober wellness in three critical facets. First, to demonstrate what's possible, as I just kind of went over. And I went over the fact that there's more meaningful ways, but this is a way that gets attention. Second, I wanted to proactively provide, instead of just like, look at me, look what's possible. I want to say, okay, now I'm going to teach you too. Proactively providing lessons, programs, coaching, whether virtual as well as in person, and access to aquatic facilities, which is really important, because a lot of people, especially in early recovery, they're coming out of these sober houses. How do I, pool access costs money. I'm out of job, and so that's one of the goals we have, is to provide access to aquatic facilities for people, especially in early recovery. And I don't necessarily believe that swimming is going to save the world and it's going to save everybody. But we use that as a framework to provide people with, a framework for goal setting, community building. Because, like I was exposed to dragon boat racing or dragon boating, whatever. And thought, well, that was fun. But then I really got into, I found my own identity, through the swimming community. And so those that don't, permanently latch on to swimming in the long term can still grasp the benefits of that healthy lifestyle. And that the healthy lifestyle has on their recovery and overall mental well-being. And third, to help people in recovery to give back. And this is part of what helps to break the stigma. They show their families and communities the extent of the impact that individuals can have on society at large. We impact our friends and families, when we get sober in a positive way, but there are people in sobriety that in recovery that there's one guy out there, Ben Tuff, who's raised $100,000 for Clean Oceans campaign. And so when we go out and participate, and I'll tell you about this relay that we're doing of the Catalina Channel, everybody's raising money for various charities. So in other words, you save us, don't exclude us, don't pass us up. Don't say, you know what, I'd rather give my $50 to cancer research. Because if you help save us, we'll go out and make a big impact on social issues out in the world. And so, a lot of people want to know, it was actually about a year ago, I successfully swam the Catalina Channel as a solo marathon, one leg of the Triple Crown, which I talked about. And swimmers who want to be recognized for this achievement, they can only use a Speedo, a single cap, and goggles. That's it. And it has to be totally unassisted. They can't hold on to the boat. They can't wear a wetsuit. I can't even wear a watch to see how they're pacing. No flotation. It's often cold. It's dark. And for the Catalina Channel, which is off the coast of LA, if you're not familiar with it, this takes place. They usually start you at about 11 p.m. and so that, the swimmers can finish before the prevailing afternoon winds make it really difficult condition wise. So, imagine being dropped off in the middle of the ocean, in the middle of the night, and being told to swim 7 hours or to swim 20 miles through it was about 7 hours of total darkness in the open ocean. I couldn't see where I was going necessarily. I couldn't see my destination. I didn't know what was waiting for me underneath the surface. I was unprotected from the cold. And it's kind of similar, I tell you about this, it's similar to what a new life in recovery can feel like. There's certain freedom and optimism, but there's a lot of unknown factors that can, lead to a lot of fear. But in the Catalina Channel and the mini marathon swims, we have a kayaker to serve as a guide, and they point us in the right direction. They feed us, they hand us bottles of hydration and nutrition. And they encourage us. And even though we swim on our own, we've got somebody by our side to help us succeed. And this is what healthy recovery is all about. People helping people. And more importantly, this is what, our foundation. That's why I created the I Swim For Foundation, to help other people, just like, who's your kayaker. And it's important to note that this is a supplemental program of recovery. We don't consider that swimming is going to be your savior. It's got to be a supplemental program in recovery. I mean, for me, it's a 12-step program first and swimming. But as I mentioned, as I alluded to earlier, coming up here in September, we've got a sober relay where we're going to do the Catalina Channel. We've got 2 teams of 6. We'll swim simultaneously, 2 swimmers at a time, swim for an hour through the dark, side by side, and then another, 2 more swimmers will come in. And think about 8 or 9 out of 12 of us are all in recovery. A couple more have really compelling stories about how they were affected by other people who ultimately got into recovery. And so that's September 26th, 27th. You can go to iswim4.org to learn more about that. And that who's your kayaker thing is really potent in terms of a story in recovery. And as I said, you can learn more about I Swim For, the mission, the projects at iswim4.org. And we'd love to have you encourage people to come join us, to ask about, because we're going to have programs popping up all over. We've already done programs here in the Mid-Atlantic. We're working with the Phoenix to introduce some programs. We've done 1 or 2 so far. We've done some in La Jolla, California, and San Diego. So we're already bi-coastal. And obviously, access to the aquatic facilities and the types of programs we run take funding. So we're really busy working on that fundraising stuff. But it's really neat adventure to shine a light on what's possible in recovery, and that's what we're trying to do. That's what I've been trying to do with the swimming, and that's what we're trying to do through I Swim For organization. So at that, Bob. I misread the email. I thought you gave me 45 minutes instead of 15, but no, I'm just kidding. I will end it there. Thank you very much. I appreciate being part of this.
Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate that. That swimming at night sounds pretty terrifying. Leave it at that. So last up of our presenters tonight, we have Laura Waits from Sync Recovery. Since 2012, Laura has identified as a person in recovery and dedicated time to research tools that are significant to a healthy lifestyle free from drugs and alcohol. The pathways Laura has found beneficial in her personal journey are a balance of 4 core components: social connection, health and wellness, spirituality, and service. Developing healthy relationships, nurturing her physical body and mental health, finding a sense of awe in nature, and honoring the miracle of life has given her a sense of purpose. She felt called to serve her community by encouraging others to use these broad concepts to create a life beyond their wildest dreams, and Synchronicity Recovery Foundation was born. As a founder of the Recovery Community Organization, Laura uses these elements to drive its mission. The board of directors, staff, and volunteers of Sync Recovery is passionate to help build meaningful connections, increase their appreciation for wellness, find purpose in community, and live life passionately. With that, I'll give you Laura.
Well, thank you, Bob. And thank you, Kim. And thank you, Be Part of the Conversation, for having this conversation. Um, I think pathways to recovery is how I live my life in recovery. And I am hearing from the other panelists a lot of ties into how this all works. And so that's really exciting to hear, that we're all on the same page in one way or another. I guess I can start with telling you that my journey in drugs and alcohol started at, I was a little kid. I was 13 years old, and didn't know what I was doing, but what I knew was that I wanted to be popular and I wanted to fit into my own skin. And that's what drugs and alcohol did for me. Through my teens, it helped me fit in and it helped me feel comfortable. I started seeing some trouble and some consequences of my actions at age 20. I found a man to marry to get me out of that trouble lifestyle, I guess, but my addiction continued, and by my 30s my marriage was on the rocks, and by my 40s I wanted to die. I wanted to end my life. I couldn't imagine going on living without alcohol and drugs, and I couldn't imagine living without them. And like Lauren, I didn't know where to turn. I didn't know who to ask for help. I felt like a weak person. It was a terrible situation, and I am thankful for some people in my life who brought me to a doctor who gave me a test. I think it's called "Are You an Alcoholic?" or something like that, that AA puts out, and I scored extra credit. And they told me I could, my parents came into the picture at that point, and God, I'm so thankful that I was able to go to treatment and out of my own way for 30 days. And there are some really important things that I learned there. And one of the most pivotal moments for me in that 30-day journey was when my group of women that I was housed with got in a circle and talked about everything they had lost to drugs and alcohol. And I'm thinking, good God, these are beautiful women, loving, just so much life in them. And they wouldn't do this on purpose. They wouldn't lose their jobs on purpose. They wouldn't lose their homes on purpose. They wouldn't lose their kids on purpose. They wouldn't lose their self-respect on purpose. And that's when I recognized that I am like them. And I wasn't doing it on purpose. I was using because I had the disease of alcoholism, and I was using drugs as well. And then the other thing that happened that was really, it didn't play out until later, but my therapist at treatment asked me what I was going to do for fun when I got out. And starting at age 13 and running until 42, I really had no idea how to have fun without drugs and alcohol. She stumped me. She walked me around the campus to try to get something out of me. I just didn't know. I think I came up with scuba diving or something. I mean, so the story continues. They talked me into going to a recovery house, which I fought tooth and nail at first, and they caught me on a good day when I had to make my final decision, and I said yes. And that was a really terrific experience for me. I don't know that I'd be sober without that. They told me I had a big ship to turn around, and that I needed some time, that I needed to go beyond 30 days in a safe space. And that's exactly what that house was for me. It was a safe space, and it taught me it taught me who I am without drugs and alcohol, quite frankly. I mean, I needed some time to practice who I was without that. And so that was a good space for that. And then the other thing was they turned me on to a community of people through an anonymous program, which you probably know what it is, but that program helped me. And that was really my first path out into the world of recovery. From there, I continued on. I did end up moving out of my recovery house after 6 months, not 3 months, because I liked it there. I was safe there. And so the mandatory 90 days was extended, and I got to stay for 6 months. And went on my merry way. I was still riding the high of being sober. But in my second year of sobriety, I have to tell you, I got bored and I got antsy, and life started happening, and it wasn't all rainbows and butterflies. And my brain told me to drink. And I didn't. And I took the next right move, next right step. And I can remember being so mad at myself and calling my friends and like telling on myself like I had done it, but I hadn't. And I just thought about it. It was so strong. But that gave me some resilience. And so the next time that happened, I could get through that again. And I knew that I needed to go to my community when that happened again. I needed to reach out, and I needed to talk to people who understood what I was going through. Then about that same time, it's funny how the universe works. I met a group of people that were just back from a recovery event called Unite to Face Addiction. And it was a big, giant concert with lots of people. I think tens of thousands of people were down there. And they wanted to bring something like that back to the Lehigh Valley. And that's where I was living at the time. And I just so happened to get invited to their meeting to do that. And they had a sober music festival called Rally in the Valley. And I skipped a part of where I had acquired a nonprofit that I really didn't know what to do with. At any rate, we started the Sober Music Festival. They were looking for a nonprofit, and I just happened to have one that wasn't doing anything. And so Think Recovery's first event was called Rally in the Valley. And we had that at Cedar Crest College, and 600 people came out. That's a lot of people for your first event. And what we realized from that event was that the feedback that we got was people really, really liked being together in a public place and being able to talk out loud and just hearing all of the same sort of language together. And what it provided to new people that were coming out of treatment was a sense of hope. And they were flabbergasted at the number of people that were there, not hiding and being out about their recovery. And as time went on, we decided to plan the next year, but we also decided as an organization that we needed to do more events. And so we had a basketball tournament, and we invited a bunch of recovery houses in the area to come play that. And then we did a kayaking event, and then that was really a popular event, and we had about 75 people come out for that. And then we decided we were going to start hiking once a month, and people were coming out for that. And I saw that there was a gentleman pair who is my right hand was doing a similar program in the same area. And I said, let's collaborate, let's do stuff together. And so he was into that, and we started doing hiking and some events together. And then COVID happened, and we had to make a decision on whether we were going to continue getting together in person and dealing with that, or dealing with the struggles that people have when they're in isolation. And so we decided that we were going to continue doing what we were doing. And Northampton County came along and liked what we were doing and offered us a contract to do for them some events like our hiking, and they wanted us to add some stuff. So we added creativity night and music lessons, and we started doing yoga and just all sorts of stuff, and people really started digging it. And so what I have found through my personal journey is that I needed that social connection, right, that we talked about. Certainly health and wellness was a factor for me. My first job was at a holistic wellness center, and I was the cooking instructor there. And I didn't know how good a body could feel without drugs and alcohol. Between exercising and eating right, I say it got me off my depression and anxiety medicine. I'm not a doctor, but I do know that I felt good enough to come off of that. I also needed some sort of higher power that I can let things go to, and just sort of take life as it comes and not get too uptight about it, because I find when I get too uptight, my brain says there's a way to relieve that trigger. So I've become very mindful in the way that I take care of my brain. The other thing that I have found is service opportunities and feeling purposeful. And so with Sync, we've just sort of wrapped all of that together into, we do about 30 events a month now. We see about 250 people. We have a great volunteer force, and Lauren, power to you for being a volunteer coordinator. But our volunteers are amazing. We do an orientation and a leadership skills for them, and they are able to lead some of our events. And I was just thinking how Jeff or Tom was talking about how you create a community, like your swimming created a community, your golf created a community. And that's what it seems that we're doing here. I love watching people do our disc golfing and get so confident that they're actually joining a league. So they're disc golfing in a different community, not necessarily recovery, but a different community. One of our young people decided that he really dug our hiking trips. And so he got an American Hiking Guide certificate through us. And it's made a great, not to toot our horn, but I'm going to. I think it has made a great big impact on our community and the way that people look at recovery. I know if anybody told me what those first 2 years were going to be like, that's great. But those after that 2 years, I was stuck. And it was really important to find a passion. And I know that other people tell me it's really important to find a passion. And I like Sync because we can pop around our passions. If you get tired of something, we got something else. And so it's been a really fun 5 years of growing. And I'm looking forward to seeing where all of this goes and keeping these conversations going. Again, thank you. Just to make people aware that there are different ways. And I too don't say that this is the only way, but it is definitely a supplement, and it's definitely working for people. We have 80% of our participants coming back. So that's what we like to see. I think that's it for me.
Thanks, Laura. And thanks everybody for sharing, your different experiences. And, we really touched on a lot of those. You really explained that definition of recovery in 4 unique individual ways. but ways that, add value to your own lives and the lives of those around you. So now we will open it up for any questions, thoughts, feelings. Kim did share a bunch of information that was shared at the beginning of the meeting. All four of the groups that are here tonight, their information will be on the follow-up page at conversation.zone/pathways. So you'll have that information, but the floor is open for everybody if you have any questions.
I just want to thank you, all of you, for sharing your story. It's really amazing to hear successful stories, and sometimes it's hard to see any hope. So to hear your stories and your struggles, and especially your successful story, at least gave me a lot of hope.
I have a question. And to any of the speakers, I guess, at what point in recovery do you think it's a good idea to introduce the idea of sports? Like, is there a time that could be too early and end up unmotivating?
I mean, I can answer just from my own experiences. I think it depends on the person. For like myself, sports were already like a crucial part of my life. So I needed a way to figure out how I could still stay connected to that portion with like the recovery process, because it was both triggering to me, but also it was something that I did enjoy. So I think like one of the things, at least with the Phoenix, is we offer just wellness activities. So even if it's like someone just going on a walk and being able to go on a walk with someone else, like as early on as they just have that connection is helpful, because even if it doesn't resonate with them immediately, at least they know that's an option. And when they're like are truly ready, they can like keep going back to that. So it's just something that they might be able to connect with, even if it's not necessarily a super intense physical activity. Just any little bit can be helpful to someone.
Yeah, and I'll kick in with that too. In my experience, at least participating, I believe at least that participating early on, even in recovery houses, etc., can have a tremendous impact. Again, on your physical well-being, impacts your mental well-being, and I can still remember how good I felt just participating. Now, if you come out, you've got, as we refer to that pink cloud, you've got to be riding a big pink cloud, and you say, you've been sitting on the couch for 10 years smoking and drinking, and you think, I'm going to run a marathon, or I'm going to, try out for the NFL. That can have, a tremendous disappointment, and obviously I'm making light of trying out for the, but, a realistic goal for a lot of people would be, I'm going to go run a marathon, and they get to the end of a month and thought, I'll never be able to run a marathon. And that can be disappointing, but just, some participation in a community that can guide you and help to manage your expectations and help you to set appropriate goals, I think is important. So that's my 2 cents on the subject.
Yeah, and I think one other thing I'd add is like, I don't know, you often hear like that it's replacing one addiction with another addiction if somebody gets obsessive with wellness activities. So it's just really making sure it's not impacting your quality of life in other areas. For me, it was, that pack a day smoker, and in a couple months sober, I was like, all right, I'm going to stop smoking. I'm going to start going to the gym. It didn't become something that I obsessed with and promoted that additional layer of wellness that I was seeking in my recovery.
I think it's also the beauty of these kinds of programs. It's a great question, by the way, because we often hear that, early on in recovery, no big changes and all that, but these are such helpful things, especially if you're associating with one of these groups that is focusing on recovery, where that's absolutely part of the process. I spoke with Laura recently and learned a lot more about Sync, and, she talked about the fact that there's sharing, there's this immediate camaraderie, and especially when Tom talked about the culture of drinking in the golfing community, like my goodness, thank God there's a place. And I'm sorry to hear there's a waiting list because there's obviously a need for this. And I'm curious, Tom, is there any potential for growing that league?
Yeah, what's been great is that, you know, the league has been every year as we've had a waiting list, we found a way to get the next year to get, you know, folks into it. And we have an event every year where people who would be newcomers or on a waiting list or whatever would be invited for like a 2-day golf event that we do when we go away. So we do, that's a real focus, is bringing in the newcomers or the new golfers that want to be a part of it. As we know, that's the most, as we say, the most important person in the room and most important person on the golf course as well when it comes to our golf league. But I would echo those sentiments. I mean, I have a friend who, in terms of how early to start, a friend of mine credits golf with just in his early days of like saving his life, because, you know, when you're counting hours and counting days like that, just having something to do, whether it be going for a walk, going to the gym, hitting golf balls, whatever, like that's obviously the connection between mental health and exercise, as everyone's discussed, are myriad and vast. But just the as a time occupier, there's that as well, that you can't underestimate the importance of that, especially in the beginning of recovery. I have an entirely unhealthy relationship with golf. I'll admit that. And when we talk about substituting addictions, but I acknowledge that, I'm aware of it. Golf isn't going to kill me, and it's taken me to very cool places, and I've met great people through it. So I acknowledge that about my personality, that I'll be obsessive. By acknowledging it, I have a chance to put it in check sometimes when I want to, and then sometimes to indulge it when I don't. But again, I'd much rather be obsessed with the next golf course I'm going to play than my next drink, which is the joy of recovery.
I would just have 2 comments I wanted to make. The first is to Lauren. Lauren, it was interesting to hear that you reached your path without having been through a 30-day program. And almost everything we hear is that's kind of essential. Our son is attempting to recover. He is in the Smart Recovery program. And I keep wondering, doesn't he need the 30 days? So it was interesting for us to hear that that was not your path and it has worked for you. Tom, I'm wondering, with this long waiting list for people to join this program, this would be really ideal for our son. And I think it's a fabulous program. And if more volunteers would help you, I would like to volunteer my husband.
I can't putt, Tom.
None of us can putt.
Yeah, I know.
No,
But-
as I said, if we have someone reach out, and I think I put the website on the in the chat. If someone contacts the league, the Wilson Smith League, we're just wilsonsmith.org. You'll hear back from someone in the league who's a lot of sobriety, and if there's not a spot in the league right now, they'll try to golf with them or invite them to our end of year. I mean, that's really the like I said, there's no barrier to entry aside from sobriety, that you're interested in living a sober life. So it's been kind of cool. It's spreading. We've seen it sort of spreading to other areas in small capacities, and but it's become quite a thing here, and we want to and certainly would love to have your son or anyone as part of it.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Mike, and just thank you all for taking the time to speak to us today. It was great. Hi, Kim. And I happen to be a PGA golf professional, and I manage golf courses in the Pennsylvania and New Jersey markets. And Tom, maybe we can talk offline, but very interested in what you're doing. And would love to see if we can help. We have one golf course in the portfolio in Bucks County that is on a park, so there's no alcohol allowed. So it's a little different kind of environment for a golf course, which is really neat. And we thought about doing a sober league there. So, but I'd love to see if we can help anyway, and love to connect with you on that. And thanks everybody for sharing today.
No, thank you. And that would be that'd be great. You can get me through the league or tomcoyne.com or anything like that. And that'd be fun. I'm actually operating a golf course now as part of the talk about the promises of sobriety. That now I own and operate a course in the Catskills. Where my super is sober, I'm sober. The members aren't all sober for sure. But with it's interesting. It's a gift to be able to be on that side of the business and just be able to enjoy myself in golf when it wasn't the case for a long time.
Yeah. Well, thanks.
There was a question in the chat. What was the name of that golf park again, please?
Yeah, Oxford Valley Golf Course is in Bucks County Park systems, and we operate it for the county. So it just happens to be a facility, a 9-hole facility. Really kind of, a great place to learn and start the game, but it's kind of fun for everybody. And being that it's a park system, theoretically, there's no alcohol. Not that people don't try to sneak it in, but it's not in your face kind of place. So it's great for that kind of atmosphere.
Thanks, everyone. We appreciate y'all, and everyone have a good night.